that wide world of sports, sort of that genre, when they did rounds and stuff like that, he was sort of like explaining is like it was a different way of working altogether. Like he goes, now as doing it, he goes, you couldn't do the same thing. He goes, no one can do it. He goes, it's one of those things you just can't you can't teach it.
You can't. It's a different audience. It's a different time. You know what was over in the 70s and 80s to what is over now is just completely different. And we've been trained to appreciate a different style. I've had one rounds match in my career, and it'd easily be in the top 3 worst matches I've had. It's
really,
the audience. Fair enough. The guy that I was having it with was somewhat difficult to plan with. Let's say that, but the audience just didn't understand it because it's so it's meant to be it's a 2 out of 3 falls match, but it's also a rounds match, right? So as soon as there's too many bells going on, you've got pinfalls, but that's not the actual end. Then you've got other bells that, even though you've explained it's a rounds match, try explain that to just the most casual wrestling fan that is just used to when the bell goes, that's it, it's over. So you get this sort of like lull between like the matches. The way you structure it is like, as you're getting towards the end of a round, you're perhaps the babyface is meant to be in peril. There's like a sort of, you've got a submission or whatever, or the heels in a submission and they get saved by the bell, essentially. But when you're in submission and the bell goes, people think that's the end of the match. They think they've either missed a tap, or like it's been like a verbal submission or something like that. And it just doesn't work for me personally. I mean, there's one promotion in the UK called Premier, and the guy that runs it has been promoting it, I think it's the 80s, something like that, like a very, very long time. So he's super old school, right?
Yeah.
And he will always do one rounds match in his shows because he just wants to keep the tradition alive. And that's fine. It's perfectly well and good. But the shows that I've seen of his and that I've been on, I personally think the worst match is always the rounds match for that reason that I've just said, that the crowd they're just not as into it, and it just doesn't build in the way that people expect a wrestling match to build nowadays.
Well, you lose your audience as well. Like depending if it's a family friendly crowd, then your majority of the crowd is kids, and then parents who may like wrestling or may even be tuning into it, or their kids are just there. And it's like it's wrestling for your audience, and I feel like in doing that, you're not really giving the audience. I mean, you're confusing them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it just For me, it doesn't work. It's the sort of thing that when I one day get my own promotion, which I know every wrestler says, but it's a very real goal of mine. There's no way I'd ever have a rounds match. I'd 2 out of 3 falls. I don't mind as a stipulation, but not to then be confused, to then have the added confusion of the round system as well. It just
Do you think like a hardcore match is kind of like gone as well? Like, because you think like now, like you see fans have seen death matches and people like just fucking each other up with like glass and shit. Like, do you think that now they like, because you don't really see many hardcore matches, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, remember that sort of like early 2000s, the Mick Foley style matches in like WWE, or even like remember the hardcore title gimmick that they used to do? Do you think like we can't do those matches can't be done anymore?
I think they can be done, definitely. I think certainly in terms of, because to me there's a difference between a hardcore match and a death match, right? The death match, when you're straight into death match territory, that's when you're doing glass, barbed wire, thumbtacks, all that sort of stuff, and that you